Mistress of ceremonies?
Actually, yes, Samantha is going to help us out with the games. So we're going to do a game quiz to get us all warmed up. And this is something we remember from last year. I would let you know. Hi, everybody. Are you guys ready for games? Yes. Okay, one more. Are you ready for games? Yes. Woo! So, exactly. Right. So this is a very important part of this process, and my favorite part. So I hope you guys remember, if you guys were here last year, we played the birthday game, and very popular, huge success. So we're going to do that again this year. So is it cool if we ask people to go outside again? Okay, so what we're going to do, as soon as I release you, go out into the hall, and we need you to line up. Down. Okay, so this part of the hall.
Toward the bathrooms.
So that's that. There are multiple bathrooms. Okay, so when you walk the door to the left. Yes? Okay, so what we need you guys to do is line up from the earliest birthday, starting January 1st, to the latest, December 31st. But you are not allowed to talk. And you're not allowed to use smartphones, and you cannot use your driver's license, and you cannot write it down. Okay? Don't cheat. Do not cheat. When you're cheating. And so if you're wondering how to do that, that's part of the game. Yeah? So if we are ready to go, I will lead the way out there. You can follow me. Yes. You can't talk about it now.
Oh my God.
Asking to sit on the steering committee.
Oh, good.
I'm your most grateful. I'm your most grateful person. I'm the most grateful person.
That's all right. You're critical in many ways. Good. So are you, what's going on with Africa? Are you really planning on doing that?
But I'm not going to be leading it. So I had the discussion with Nick, but she's not going to be really involved. She will just give some background, like if there's need be mentoring. And then I have Kagani I'm speaking to tomorrow night to hear where we're going. And then I've just recruited Nikki, the one from South Africa. Somebody just told me that she wants to be on the committee, which is good. Because last year she did join the committee. And I'm thinking of location-wise. I was thinking of Namibia or Mauritius, but now somebody voiced concern about Mauritius about accessibility, flights and stuff. So, because in Namibia, I think that the team is just very low level. So, and it's cheap. Yeah, we have an international conference every year, and it's very well oiled. But I'm not going to be the chair. You know, if I take a role, it will be on the committee somewhere. You know, on the technical committee or whatever. So I'm going to place a call out across Africa and ask who wants to chair it. But we do want Africans.
Oh, absolutely. So a question, are we gonna do, all right, it's there, the part, is it gonna be an incorporation or a co-sponsor?
So I have to, because in reality, I have to go with the finances again. So University of Nairobi is not going to sponsor the facility this time. But we did make a loss, which is a very good thing. So we have to do
Co-sponsor.
yeah. So that's what
For that, you're gonna start with, TRMF thing, and there's a bunch of stuff you have to do.
Yeah. So yeah, we did that. Well, we sort of did a lot of things last time. The other thing is also that okay, so for the HCI symposium, I can't talk because we have to speak to the symposium in Namibia. So he said that we should speak to Lauren, but he said that I must go on the development fund thing on the website and find some previous proposals that were sponsored and then do it exactly according to those ones. Because he says that what is very good, but where we might have some things is when people ask Lauren questions and there's a gap and he doesn't know. This is just talking to Lauren, doesn't help. So he says if we can get it in for next Friday, and then he says that we really need to go look at approve the proposal and do it according to that.
I've got something on my computer from,
This is for you, but I can not.
oh, awesome. Oh, awesome.
Okay, so that's my vote for. I thought it'd be fun when I was doing Namibia.
Goodness.
So I thought it'd be fun to do this. And so I'm not so sure you want some that.
Awesome.
So this is just very plain. You know what I like? So I just plain. So this is okay. So this is most definitely.
Oh, wow.
So this is the ostrich egg
Oh, my goodness.
that they use. So this is very Namibian.
Very special. Thank you.
And then this is a hello, and this is a Navajo. This is the one that's related to me and the sun. We have this. It's supposed to be like this. The short
Beautiful.
So I couldn't remember what I ever gave you, dolls. But this is like Namibian.
Yeah. So this one, you gave me a larger one.
Oh, okay.
Like that, but this in the north. This was huge.
Well, we
Okay, and then I have this for you. Oh my goodness. They normally come the top of that.
and then I have to trees and these foods. I just have to ask one of those. And then they normally put names, they cover your name wherever you go.
Oh my goodness. This is embarrassing.
Yeah, these are this is normally Libyan, where the currency goes away.
Oh, so
That's normally what the traditional.
well.
That was a mission.
Hey guys, thanks for participating in the game. What did you guys find challenging about that? Or surprising maybe? Anyone? Yeah,
How Americans put month and day and dates, and the whole world does day and month.
very good. That's great. Anything else? Yeah. The differences in representations of the units.
British Sign Language, so I tried to sign, but then I realised that obviously British Sign Language and I couldn't remember American Sign Language, and then I realised I didn't really want to the American Sign Language.
So if you were to play this game, I mean beyond like the month and date switch, if you were to play this game in say your home country, how might this be different, do you think, than how you played it today?
I guess we have these stickers in the country.
I mean just from your perspective, any country that you're familiar with, like if you could think of playing this game there, how do you think it might play out differently?
Each space,
Oh, space. That's a good. So lack of space in London.
So I feel like if we go back to your country and do that, I think the norms around body language would be sort of the same, so communication would be better, just because you kind of expect what to read from that body language.
I also think that this groups things better in that this group that more people probably think, okay, the best way to solve people are supposed to do maths and then sort of things after. Whereas I go home, people are more used to saying, oh, I was born on 15 October, and they'll probably do 15 first before they think of October.
Interesting.
Math is speak the same language in terms of the age format. I don't think many people would think of bracketing people into
I think that's not necessarily what you said. I think that was what it sounds like.
Exactly. That's what I'm
They
saying.
think problem solving wise is batching to 12.
Yeah.
It's problem solving.
So people are saying that people are thinking like computer science, and so which is interesting. I don't think of myself as thinking like a computer scientist. So it's interesting that that's so like you're thinking of dividing it into groups of 12 first.
First, and then
Right, and other people were saying that if if they took this back home, they would say like 15 October 1st to start organizing by numbers instead of dates. I mean instead of months, which would take a really long time.
Actually, the representation also varies between the different experts. Like statisticians prefer to tell 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. So
Right.
some people are using 5, 5, and then 2, 12.
Right.
Some are using 1 and 2, 12 together.
Yeah, so based on
Varying between the background.
a background or career that they organize numbers differently and dates differently. Yeah. Yes.
With oral cultures, compared to written cultures, and then where rules aren't as strict, for example, I feel like, if I may say so, I saw a couple of Pakistanis, we just blurted out, not realizing that who we were, it wasn't intentional cheating, but it was cheating.
Right.
So I feel like if I did this in Pakistan more,
Yeah, no, that's fascinating.
and then, oh, sorry, those kind of things.
Even Rashmi did that.
See, so one more, I think you were reading it.
I suspect that they forget about telling their true birth month or day and just stick with their friends and whatever and just pick a number.
Oh, that's
Just
interesting.
standard chat.
Yeah.
And they'll probably too, they would ignore the non-talking rule and just keep on talking.
So ignoring the talking rule and then also just staying with your friends and saying a number that's convenient to you, not your actual birthday. That's smart. That's actually a good idea. Oh yeah.
We do some work with the deaf community. I feel like this would be really easy for them because they would already have a set way signing what their birthday was. But the other thing is, like, we have a student here, Joan Bacon.
She's right outside actually.
We have a blind student, so how is she participated in this exercise?
That's an excellent point. Yeah. Yeah.
So you just follow the instructions given by you, so you said no talking, and you just follow as you said, but you never said no singing. So I tried that, though I like you, I did try that. But I didn't go against you. I followed
No. I mean, you followed what you were told.
impression. I was saying, back in India, quite a few people of us have one that is 2 birthdays, one that is registered officially, and then one that we actually made. So that's a quite a common. It's common for people in India to have a couple of birthdays. I didn't know this was
And so cool. Okay, so one more just for time's sake.
The other thing that I realized that I was sick because my birthday is in the 9th month, so I could just do this. Anybody who had it in the 11th or 12th month needed 2 more fingers. So if they do this, it would feel like that. Oh, it's 10th month, 2nd day, or is he trying to tell me 12th month? So yeah, that was something that was I didn't face, but I'm sure people 10th to 11th month would have faced.
That's great. So thank you guys so much for participating. This is, I thought it might be similar to last year, but this is actually, I feel like, very different results than we got last year. So this is great. Thank you guys. Oh, one more question. I'm sorry. Would anyone like to say about what they're going to take back? Not literally about this game, but just what, from this experience, what are you going to take home?
And we come around that and then do the same thing. People with different disabilities, right?
Right. So looking at, how might someone who's blind participate? That's an excellent point.
I try to remember to wish Jay on 1st August for his birthday. Now I know your birthday. It's on 1st August, right? I just said now I can remember to try to wish you, maybe. It starts with J, isn't it? So let's do something. I know this is the 31st, yes. And you were? 10.
Anyone else?
Is anybody's birthday today? Is anybody's birthday today?
Did anyone have a birthday today? That's a great question. Did anyone have a birthday today? Does anyone have a birthday this late during Kai? Anyone? Oh, that's really sweet. Yes, is there a hand back there? Yeah, call you up. On the 4th? Happy birthday.
Okay, stand up. Birthday girl. Nobody's minding. Okay, well, we're gonna sing Happy Birthday. And we're gonna sing it the American way, so if you have a different, a different, sing whatever words you want, but if it's a different tune, just try to sing it soft. I'm sorry, could you repeat your name? Dina. Sorry, you should know these things. Okay. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dina. Happy birthday to you.
Thanks so much, my friend. And while we're on the topic of games, did anyone get the full house on the main? How close did you get? Anyone with 20 out of 24? I think Savi had a bunch. 18? Did anyone have more than 18?
No,
Savi, you want to come and share? You want to come and share your findings?
The thing I should have done though is to write all the names of the people, but I don't have all the names. The latest finding is from the game. I found the person with whom I share birthday, so that's pretty great. We weren't too sure if there's the people here who come from a time zone that's 12 hours ahead of Denver. Turns out it's a bit squishy between Bangladesh and India, and Nova and some of the guys from India actually fall into that time zone. And Melissa and Isaac are doing HCI cross borders. There's this exciting work here on chatbots for maternal health. And then, what else is exciting? Well, I took a few boxes, but I think, and also Nova has watched Moana, and she likes it. Anisha is doing.
You were missing. You want to?
Oh, the ones I'm missing. I couldn't find anybody who was born in Lesotho. Obviously, there wouldn't be. Or somebody who does work in Lesotho. And I just want to use this opportunity to say that of exciting possible work in Lesotho people. So next time you're thinking of a place to do work, think about Lesotho so I can check this box next time. And is there anybody here who forgot their trading cards? Because that would have been a great box to check. You forgot your trading cards. Richard, you did something. So I didn't find a person who forgot to bring trading cards, and I'm not wearing socks, so I couldn't find somebody to share who shares the same kind of socks as me, because I'm not wearing any. Yeah, but otherwise it was a great game. I got to talk to people.
Voice-based systems.
I didn't find anyone who's doing voice-based systems. I think there should be, isn't there? Yeah, it's just that I didn't meet them. It's just that I thought it would be cheating to cross over when I didn't actually go to. But yeah, those guys do voice-based systems. Is anybody doing mental health work? Mental health? Is anybody doing any work with mental health? Oh, you are? Cool. Is anything that was really challenging apart from the ones I mentioned? I think the birthday thing was challenging and I wouldn't have taken until the game. So that's pretty great. Okay, cool. Thanks.
Thank you.
I can say this because Neha can't, because this was her idea. But what I think is this would be really fabulous to do with students, and you might do it over a period of time. It doesn't have to be about this sort of thing. It could be about articles that they're reading or various things. But I think it's a very, very creative way to get people really engaged. So thank you very much, Neha.
Thank you, Susan. So we're going to move on now to doing the teamwork, and we have about half an hour before we have our next break. So what we're going to do is just continue the process and start reforming teams.
Yeah, so we have these topics identified based on the poster, so this is kind of the starting point for the team building process. So there's the possibility that you get into the very same teams. There's a possibility that within the discussions within the next 30 minutes, you get to new ideas and other combinations of papers which might make more sense. So you can switch teams or redefine whatever we have there. So the goal is that in the next 30 minutes, we'll come up with, in the best of the cases, with 10 teams, maximum of 10 teams because we have 10 tables. That's the...
We have 10 tables or 8?
Yes.
We have 8 tables.
Oh, we have eight tables, but we have 10.
Well,
Anyway,
then
we will get to
people
it.
can sit on the floor.
Okay, I can read this once again. So the topics that we have identified, one is education, mobile computing, health and mental health, crowdsourcing, identity, social computing, gender, co-design, and moving and displaced people. These are the clusters that we have identified, well, that you have identified based on the topics that you have on the posters.
And what you could do maybe is if you can just occupy different sections of the room. So let's say you're sure you want to do social computing and you want to occupy that corner. So everyone who wants to do social computing can kind of fall in that direction.
And if anyone sees one topic that might not be represented by the cluster, but he or she feels that that might be a topic for a new group, just get in a corner and call out the topic, and people can come to you and you can form a different group. Okay, so the goal of the next 30 minutes is that we end up having a number of maybe 7, maybe 8, maybe 9 different topics, 9 different groups, which you will be working on afterwards based on the topic that you have chosen.
And what you can do, so the first person who decides they want to do education, for instance, can just write this, hold it up, and everyone else can kind of come and join. Okay? So these sheets of paper are here, markers are here.
So if no, so there are 10 topics that you have already identified, but it can be 8, it can be 10, it can be 11. So, but I would say maybe at least 5 per group or 6 per group, something like that. Yeah, 5 or 6 per group.
5
Makes
to 8
sense.
is a good number. 10 if you're absolutely enthusiastic.
Yeah. Okay, so the starting point could be that you check out which papers are assigned to which categories to get a feeling of if your own paper is there or makes sense to be in that category or not, or should be redefined in another one. If you have an idea, if you already identify with one of the topics, you can come up to the front, get a piece of paper, write this, and hold it up so that people can come to you to create the groups. So there are already a couple of papers, so maybe if you can just name what's on your paper so that people can relate to and...
You both look the same. Oh, it's the second time. Let's get to this.
Anyone? Crowd sourcing? Crowd sourcing?
Isaac has two design here. Education is here. Identity.
So that is powering.
We should get them to, the Asian people to come in and put a black table.
Yeah. You did it. Whose idea was it?
I think it was decreasing.
So they put me on the spot.
And I think that somehow you turn it off. What?
Yeah, I don't know.
Getting to know each other. And I had to turn it off. And I see that. It was kind of real time. Sorry. Sorry. I never know. I trusted some of these.
Once they set it in, so the next album.
Because we can put them on during the break meeting. So we can put a pile on each table.
Yeah. Are they all using education?
Quick question, did you see Hinson had a bullet point inside? Was it blue, very thin, sort of lock, tape to the middle? Yeah, let's take it.
They just got off of the 29-hour travel. The shower already happened.
It's over here. Seen it. Great.
Nikki, I think you had a. Are you missing something? So just a quick announcement. There was a pencil case or a pen that was here, a ballpoint pen, blue color, in a pencil case. That's gone missing. So if you picked it up thinking that it was just one of ours, so just if you can return it to Nikki, can you just stand so people know who you are?
Yes, that's the last sentence during that.
Okay. Awesome. So we're doing really well on time because we had actually thought that the information would take much longer and that we'd be doing this even through the coffee break, but this is good. So we can move further. And what I do is just give you an idea of what the next session is about so that you can plan ahead. Because I've seen that some of the groups are a good size, some of the groups are a little bit larger. And in total, I think we have, 7 teams here. So you can decide if you want to stay as a large group or if you want to break into a couple of groups at your tables, either way, you're fine. And so the question is, what are you going to do with each other, right? Now that you come together as a team with some common interests. And there's different things that you might be doing, and I would invite Anisha, in fact, to also share some thoughts on this if you want. But some things that we've written out in the agenda are as follows. So you could, for instance, figure out, so the goal is to move forward as a community together. And with that goal in mind, how do we plan out our activities for the next, say, year in ways that will help this community to grow? And that could be, for instance, planning for a series of workshops, but it could also be figuring out a research collaboration with the folks at your table. It could be, writing a grant proposal together, that's something that you want to do. But basically figuring out a project that you can all get behind, and then planning accordingly and figuring
figuring out a timeline for how you would proceed along those lines. So the goal is basically for you to come up with a plan that you can actually try to follow through with in coming months. And we tried to do this last year, and we had folks in teams give us abstracts at the end of the session. So basically, the end result was an abstract from every team, and all of those went into an article for interactions, which is actually out now, so you can get an issue of interactions, and we have some as well here. And Yvonne has a carton for us if anyone from last year wants it. But basically, that's the set of abstracts that we put together. What we want to do this year is something a little bit more than that, so figure out concrete plans for how we want to proceed. Are there any, Christian, would you add to that?
So the goal is that at the end of the day of tomorrow, we will have a visual representation of the timelines of what we would like to do in the future in the next 12 months for what you are going to do until next slide. So what we are envisioning is that by tomorrow afternoon, we would have here on the wall the timeline for the next 12 months, and for each group, a specific line, and you put to the process whatever you plan to do during the next 12 months. So this kind of vision that we think might be a good idea to have by tomorrow afternoon. I think a good idea now for the first step would be to get a common understanding of the concept that you have chosen the group and for the group, so that we have a great basis for the project and for the communication. So maybe that each one presents his or her own work first, so that what do you mean by education, what do you mean by social computing, what do you mean by working for mental health, for example. So I think that's the first step to start with.
And one thing I want to mention, so one example that we learned from Greg, I don't know if Nick is in the room. Yeah? Okay. So, and there were a few others from that group as well. They were on the socio-technical team, and that was so broad. Everyone had different ideas of what socio-technical meant, and it was really hard, I think, to come up with one vision or one common theme, even just to come terms with one abstract. So that's something that we don't want to repeat this year. Right? But on the other hand, there was one, this social computing team from last year had a project that was around Cuba, and so they had a very specific kind of focus on looking at internet access in Cuba, and that might be something that's a little bit more focused and it's clear what people can bring to the table for a project like that. There was another team that that was looking at agricultural knowledge management in South Asia. So translating, not South Asia actually, so translating, I think it was digital green to other countries. And that was something that their end product was an infographic that they developed. And that infographic also you'll see that Jasmine and Hinchal put that together. And that's in the interaction issue. So that could be something that you might share with us as your timeline. So saying exactly what you want to do and how you want to put it together. Are there any questions you guys have in mind? So we can walk around. If you have questions, you can ask us then. But basically what the timeline for the rest of the day is going to be is this. So it's 3 o'clock now. It's actually time for a break. So 3 to 3:30, you can go out, have coffee with each other. It seems a bit odd that we have a break right after lunch, but I guess that's also when people need their caffeine. And then we come back at 3:30. 3:30 to 4:15 is when you'll be working on it. And at the end of that session, we want a quick madness, basically just, again, 45 seconds each, just an idea of what you guys are thinking of putting together. And at the end of that, we'll do our dialogue on mentorship. That will be the end of today. Okay? Any questions? Okay. Thank you. So you can leave the room and come back at 3:30. And you can split up, yes. So if you want, if you think you want to do some different things, please have that conversation now rather than later where you feel like you're being pulled in a direction you don't want to go in.
can still switch teams as well. So if you would like to go to another team, that's also.
Thank you.
So there's coffee outside, the cookies outside. You can keep it right.
We can even use that for right? We could do like yeah, we can do some posters, yeah. They are very no, I mean to use this space and then take that poster, post number 21. So we have that one space. So that's one timeline for yeah. We have to do it because these patterns, they're going to be using this.
actually say, okay, in February we have this, in March we have this, we have March users conference, we have this. What was it?
Oh, I just saw that everyone would have their timeline on a single sheet. So everyone would have the same format. You cannot have something for every month. Then it might
Okay, but still you don't need to bring months. But then you have for all the people you have one big picture. Horizontally or vertically, have one big picture where all the projects or things are as well on the same page, it's the same format. They don't need to for each month something, but whatever they feel like, maybe there's something on November and then next thing is March. But then you have kind of one big picture for the whole country. I think it's a nice thing. And whenever they do that as a they do this live. Let's say, okay, we have this topic, we have to find this, and this that's presentations at the end, and this, they're actually filling their spot. Big picture. You can come up with maybe in one paper. So we might encourage tomorrow what's the types of things that might so there might be conference other activity.
right now. So I can imagine that like HCI, we don't think that people want to target a journal, right? But maybe there's a journal that has specific issues and a concept and mechanisms. How do you have that initial conversation about these ideas and how do I come up with this in this context? So that I'm not hearing that.
Thank you.
Directly to London. No, more London. Meeting some key.
Yeah, sounds definitely.
Okay, so we are back from the coffee break. So the goal for the next 30-40 minutes would be, now that you have a rather common understanding of what the area is defined, to get an idea and to build a list of possible activities that might make sense for you as a group for the next couple of months. So maybe for the next 30 or 45 minutes, talking about what can be done within this until 4:10, 4:15. So one issue we would like to encourage you as well, that some groups are rather big, so it might make sense to discuss as well if there's a possibility to either split the groups or that you define several subgroups that focus on a special topic within your topic. Because if you are more than 7 or 8 people, discussions are rather not that clear. So think of maybe if it might make sense to split the groups or define subgroups so that you can come up with discussions.
This is like literally decades of work.
Yeah, get something from Bangladesh.
I think that's just invitation for more people to think about it.
Yes, but they are in a separate group. I didn't get it. Or are there?
They're just chatting.
It's just about something else here. All about the topic.
So, yeah, it's something else. And then I don't know what's going on. Which seems to be a little bit disconnected and generally more and
Last year she was pretty much engaged, but
she was very engaged and she also tried to make it independent. And Susan and I were very uncomfortable with her activism, and it was approved as activism.
which takes so leading part of the sessions or?
Yeah, it was just, it got very difficult last year, which is why we
she feels kind of
yeah, so she wanted her students to come to it and engage in it as they are here, but she herself was not really engaging. We can't do anything about that. It's just that when people are like that, then it gives an open invitation for other people to go and chat.
like people don't see it. But I think as well, what's the name of the guy from Google?
Garen?
Garen, I think he's not. Both of them were not in discussions there.
No, I guess he's trying to get out of it what he wants, and I also feel like if we're not funding them, then they're on right.
But she's funded.
You have your favor. Thank you very much.
Can we ask her why she's out there, why she's is it too obvious?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
Can you instruction sheets if you have extra?
Absolutely. They're here. Yeah.
yeah, so I think I'm doing what so she doesn't know if she's the one that doesn't want to get something out of it. But
I mean, honestly, I don't want to unnecessarily think of stress factors. So it's fine. They want to participate, I guess it's fine. And the other folks have come in. So there's nothing we can do with one person. Everyone else seems to be quite engaged.
They're engaged on anything else. No, it's discussing something. I don't know in which group they are, but still.
I don't think they're in a group.
I think
Is actually.
Sunday is in the group as well.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I saw her in that group before, but I don't know. I think Nita is going for that group as well.
I see. Okay, that's good.
I'm rather worried about that because but it's not Amy. Amy did a good job so she has a list of possible topics and she asked each topic and they voted on the topics how many people would like to talk. So she's kind of taking it extra and structured. So it's a big group, but I'm not worried because I think she's doing a good job there.
And this is the co-design.
This is co-design and the other one is identity.
Which is identity?
This is
Oh, in the
No,
middle.
social
Okay,
is at the
okay.
end.
Okay. That seems to be a manageable size. The identical.
Yes, and in
Why
the
is
end,
gender and health like falling apart?
which
Gender
the
and
last one or the
health?
second
No,
one?
no, the one in the middle. I guess Rashmi and Azra are like just.
At the end, it's only 4 people, but they are pulling it off. Pulling it off.
Yeah.
So it's actually
Yeah, absolutely. Did we lose a lot of people?
I think a couple of them. But
Five?
how many?
65.
I
Plus 6 of us. We're not missing a whole lot.
think many of them even didn't come on it, so if 88 were registered,
Yeah.
we didn't need extra chairs, and we had chairs for 80.
Yeah. Okay.
Still okay.
So 15 madness. And then the mentorship session. I might ask one of the students to
So how does it work? So
should we just
ask
say
how
we're going to do this practice? So my problem with talking about mentorship is that people can say a lot of things, but make it actually very hard. So I'm
but maybe that might make sense to start asking what they would like to have as mentorship. And then we say what we thought about it, then we can see where the gap is. Does this make sense?
yeah, and we kind of ask them on Facebook. And we can mention that these are 5 areas of thinking one way or other. Like, can you add to the list? So maybe
The ones you
yeah. And then talk about the issues, talk about existing models, and talk about how we might reform those models. And we can solicit suggestions for each of those, and then propose that we do something one time, and what would that idea look like, and we can launch it in June. And in September, what would it look like, and then just draw it out as a piece. And if people want to volunteer here as members, we add them on.
So should we collect the names? Should they just find each other? Should we formalize it that we start the process?
Yeah.
So that kind of we initiated like.
Yeah, and I think some of them, like Asya Vishesh for instance, I'm sure that we could even ask him to make something on you know, like here is hot trap set up so that we can so there's few students who we can rely on that kind of thing. And that way we can make sure that it's happening. We can just oversee it.
Then afterwards the photos and then so whoever needs to take the photo and reason that it's if you don't want to be published, then you don't
Okay, sounds good. So I'll write those things down here. Where is the list? Does it have it?
design, research design. As you're talking, I'm trying to bring together Paul and March.
So what are we? So one thing is what is political, what is political, and so on. The writing is contextualization of what's the meaning of so that hypothesis is it's a statement, not a question. And this understanding that the hypothesis is a sentence you can either affirm or you can reject. And this logical understanding, not the context, which would be the study design, but more what is the hypothesis and what is reality and what is future work, what's the meaning, like what's the semantics behind that text semantics.
So that's not study design?
Not really present. You can study design, it's more
So
the
research
way of
questions?
no, because it's more it's
Identification? Errors or identification gaps?
I think it's because what dimensioning is already the application of that. So it's more a better understanding of.
Oh, did you guys split up?
Yes.
There was a schism.
No, we just figured we probably ought to.
So what's the difference between the groups now?
We're going to work on collaborative online process student education. They're going to work on gender, equity, and language.
Oh, okay.
We had a very formative process for this.
Perfect.
Okay.
It's just like science trying to get it.
Okay. So should we call this research design? Carrying out the implementation.
Implementing the design
We already got our rights.
Yeah. But there's more, right? So structure, it could be also theoretical framing. So what theoretical framing? That's also part of the writing process. It depends. If you're using grounded theory approach, then that theory will come later. If you go with the theory environment first, you just put it, it's okay. I mean, we want it could be either theory or just so writing. Not leaving a lot of room here. So presenting work to community, outsiders or outsiders. Or in your style.
So we're certainly measured first
But it might be
outside of that.
or maybe generally what we're seeing is that there are some disconnects, right? If your PhD advisor is not giving you this kind of admissions, it may not be because they don't want to. It may be done. Maybe the area of expertise is different. One student had done I want that. So for her to understand, she was asking what is the history of how she shared that she doesn't, that she is really glad that she was able to connect with the community and support them. So that's another disconnect, right? Or if the disconnect that sending papers to guys from other countries, from other regions, and they don't make it right language, or because they haven't signed it, or because they don't know how to frame the research properly, or because they make like mistakes, right? Talking about it in a very condescending way. But they have to seek it out, right? Only if they want to. So if they really want to, let's say my student feels that she's not getting advice on and there's no one at Vertigo. One person so she might say, I would like just to know, am I the right one? And then there has to be an understanding that this person is not here to mind it has to be kind of log in a system.
You have such a strong relationship with the supervisor that you're not leaving this relationship, you're not leaving something. So what your supervisor is, what in the sense that what the supervisor is telling you, that's the way to go. So for sure you have to do this where there's self-confident enough to seek help outside. What I feel and what I saw is that a lot of students have this is something okay, and that's almost what I think that we're not able to address just yet. I was thinking that these might be obstacles that we cannot address, but this might be the reason why, because we were talking about this before, that we don't know why I would say that and I think that might be one reason why a lot of students don't want to do it. Outside supervisors. She feels kind of trying to be relevant with whatever the other professors are saying. And I'm trying to, trying to get to a point where it's her decision to take whatever the different people say or make sense of it together. But it's her decision to make responsibility as well as to unify what's out there.
Susan, did you manage to get
Oh yeah, sure. I just want to show my group.
Can you do me a favor? No.
Can you go to the entry?
So I have trying to bring one that she sees outside of my supervision, other opinions, professional opinions, to integrate them in work and try to figure out the different arguments for whatever information might come. And there's a lot in Egypt, there's a lot in Mexico as well. This relationship is very strong. That the students themselves are not accepting anything besides that. So that's just as an explanation for discussing. We cannot address it because we don't get into this relationship. We might be able to address it when we have characters here. They don't see it as one of them, but they're open enough maybe to open their mental relationship. To explain myself. We're learning it. So I think we have like maybe know that they have like 4 minutes to prepare for the madness. So we do the madness one per team, right?
Hi guys.
I think that's good.
I could, or I could use that. Oh. Hi guys, so it's 4:11. So you guys have 4 minutes to pick one person from your team to come up and share Madness style what you've decided to work on. Okay. Thank you.
You got it?
Also have to
Take the discussion further. That is awesome. I like that. I think that online share something that someone else wants to do. And that they might have something that might have worked for them.
Okay, so now we would like to get started with the LS, which means that we would like to ask one representative of each team come to the front and present in not more than 2 minutes, I guess. 2 minutes?
No, 45 seconds.
There's no 45 seconds. So you have 45 seconds to present what you have come up with.
You can take 90.
90? Okay,
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Okay, who would like to start?
Can you hear in the back? Ishaya, can you hear me? Okay, great.
Okay, sounds
Who
good.
wants to go first?
I think the first hand, yes. 90 seconds.
So say the name.
What makes you like me so much? Okay, so our topic was, or our team was looking at settling displaced people. We started out by getting a common understanding of what displaced means. We also changed the label of the team because it was different and we didn't like it, so we changed that to what I just announced. We talked about the challenges that refugees face. We talked about also the role that technology can play. We had a list of things. And then we kind of reached some kind of realization that we had two sets of people who were interested in different parts of the displacement settlement process. Some people were looking more at and concerned with displaced people who were living in camps. Others were more concerned with when they reached their country, the country that they were going to settle in, and how they would settle there. And so we decided at the end of a discussion, a long discussion on what our interests were, that we would break up into two teams, but we would both work on the same area of concern. So either education or safety or well-being, mental health. We had a lot of topics. That's the next round. We're going to focus on just discussing what topic we can kind of address across both teams so that we're still in the same area. And then we're going to come back and hopefully come together again and combine the two so that the person who is displaced and in a settlement camp has some technology, hopefully, that they can use and that they can take with them to their next stage, the next chapter of their life, where they're actually settled in the new country or the new place. And that's it.
Great, thank you.
Okay, who's next?
Hi. We basically give a thought on crowdsourcing across the borders. We initially tried to figure out what are the common interests between the participants, and we had a long list of 11 areas. So we finally figured out that it's all about finding out crowdsourcing platforms and understanding the demographic change, shift across the borders. And we thought that, okay, if we look into the popular crowdsourcing markets, say Amazon Mechanical Turk, there is a huge difference between the demography of the requesters and the workers. For example, in North America or globally on the western side, we have a lot of requesters. But the crowd workers are mostly from eastern side or maybe the southern side. So what if we try to change this demography? I mean, if the requesters are more from the other side and the workers are more from the opposite side, what will happen? And what is the difference between these patterns and why is it happening like this? Why is this bias? How to remove the bias? And what if we try to analyze these two different scenarios? So that is the plan as of now. Let's see what we can do for the next game.
Who's next?
Who's next?
Please, that's. And the next person, can you please? Kathy?
So we were working on education. So we had a pretty large group, and first of all, we managed to divide it into two groups. One more group has already been working on collaborative learning, and something. And we are working on gender equity and language. So to this end, we figured out two major issues. One is inclusive education, and the other one is equity in education. So we are trying to think of certain tangible ideas which can be worked out. And to list a few, we have organizing some workshops based on the work the members of this team have been doing through the support of HCM. And then some list of talks can also be organized among the different institutions which we all are already in, and then sharing some research articles to formulate a base for up-to-date knowledge base. That's the idea so far.
So we are the second group who's working on issues in education, and we split off to talk about collaborative, online, cross-cultural interactions, which sounds like a whole lot of things all wrapped up into one, but it turned out as we started discussing, there are a lot of instances where all three of these aspects of education come together. And so we've been sharing stories about what happens in these collaborative online spaces, both in K-12 education and also in higher education, and ended up with a lot of very similar lessons about how the most valuable thing that comes out of this is the deep sharing of experience rather than domain content and knowledge. And so our next steps are to work on understanding how to take these shared experiences that people have and bring them to the forefront. And we're trying to understand what's the right trajectory for us to bring these issues out, whether it's a tool, a paper, a set of posts for teachers to help them do this. That's our next steps for tomorrow.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, so we were the identity group, and I suppose we had a very large discussion about what identity is. It could have gone forever. But we settled on a discussion around minorities and identity and how there's a challenge when any one of us is a minority and entering into a new group, and that how are we accepted? Are we willing to work to be accepted? And we identified that one of the problems was fear. So any one of us can be really scared in a particular group, and we're not ready to be willing to engage. But also there's this identity, this whole area of self-efficacy. So we've just had a big definition of what self-efficacy is, right? So the idea that you believe you can do something. So it doesn't matter if I happen to be transgender or disabled or, I don't know, a minority standing group in Libya. It just means, do I think that my minority situation prevents me from doing what I want to do in my life? So we started thinking about how we could bring all these ideas from across the world together into one platform. And we've got some people that are very interested in narratives and embedding narratives into objects which are culturally significant and add power to local communities. So there's an example of the ostrich egg. Putting the ostrich egg, I didn't realise it was a really important thing in the Nubian culture before, but they're now very rare. So what if you put all the stories and all the history from your ancestors into this egg? Then the sound community will accept that. That's a good thing from my limited knowledge over the last 10 minutes, right? So we think that we could get a platform where, we can just tell the narratives but also visualize the data.
Thank you. Hi everybody. This group just kind of came together because of a shared interest in markets. So Nitya, Priyank, Garen, and I are interested in the borders between traditional informal markets in Asian developing countries. Some of us are working in Indonesia, India, and Cambodia, and the border between online formal markets. And we'd like to develop a research agenda for this. And our assumption is that we're not designing technologies or expecting technologies to cross borders for the betterment of livelihoods, but instead we expect when technology crosses this boundary, it will have some ambivalent outcomes. And we would like to research what those ambivalent outcomes are and how users take a role in shaping those outcomes. And some topics of interest that we have are how do these new technologies exacerbate inequalities? How does increasing centralization lead to job loss for smaller shops and markets? What is the role of logistics in connecting rural places to urban centers in new ways? How are gender roles changing in these new markets? For example, how do these spaces sometimes exacerbate existing gender roles and also sometimes invert those expectations? How does information scarcity play a role in older traditional markets, and how do new digital tools change that information scarcity? How do new digital tools become integrated into older infrastructures? How do infrastructural constraints shape markets and logistics? And how are these practices all evolving organically rather than in a top-down fashion? But first one, thank you.
Hello, our group was the co-design group. So we ended up with two objectives, one very short term, the other one very long term. So in the short term, it's coming up with an agenda for the SIG meeting for co-designing across borders, which is on Monday, 11:30. Wait, 11:30? Yes. So trying to come up with an agenda for that and what we're going to talk and do in that particular meeting. The other one was, well, what we call it stories from the field. So it is, so we pretty much started discussing what exactly it means to, well, trying to understand what it means to actually co-design. And we all came to a conclusion that there is no actual specific definition. And but then through this discussion, we ended up going through a number of stories of different experiences we've had in the field. And one of the ideas is to, for example, come up with a blog, and then from that blog to actually synthesize all these different stories and identify themes through the that we've had and experienced through the process of co-design, and actually then come up with a paper and publish it. Well, where exactly is still to be, as we said, co-designed and decide on what to do there. And the other aspect that came up from that was a case of when it comes to co-design, we still sort of jump the gun and what does it actually mean to design to begin with. And then we kind of think about how it is as researchers, but we kind of don't think about all the other people. Oh,
Thank you.
Cool.
Hi everyone. So I was part of a table that had folks from gender and healthcare, and we quickly realized that you can't talk about healthcare without talking about gender. And so with that discussion, there were two kind of major, I guess, areas that kind of came up. And one was that healthcare is very culturally situated. The practices that communities follow depends a lot on the culture and what their peers are doing. And the other kind of area of things was there were a lot of topics because of their culture specificity that they didn't want to talk about things like maternal health, menstrual health, sexual health, adolescent pregnancy, and things like that. So kind of like taking one step back, what we were looking at is how can you kind of embed healthy practices in the culture? How can you make them normative? And one way of thinking about is one thing we were thinking about is how you can kind of embed this in popular culture. So things like TV shows that are accessible by everyone. Everyone has a TV at home. So how can you embed these practices and kind of subtly introduce these things in their daily lives? So that's kind of where we're going with this.
Hi, I'm representing the social computing group. We had a lot of ideas. We kind of circled around from looking at addressing gender-based violence, supporting communication for undocumented migrants crossing through Mexico. What was the other one? Oh yes, social media for illiterate users, and then also supporting intermediated technology use. And so our group voted, and we settled on supporting intermediate technology use. Okay, and so this is something that two members of our group have kind of been thinking about, but we realized, so briefly, intermediate technology use in this context is supporting internet access and also activity through the use of either shared devices or I guess splitting up the tasks that are required to be able to get online through an app that queues offline content for you. So this is applicable in contexts where access is not consistent or there are high barriers to access, but looking at supporting an existing social practice through technology. So that is what we're doing.
Cool. Any more groups, or are we done? Okay, so we have nine groups, and we'll hear from them tomorrow, I guess, once they've made more progress. We're going to move on to the last item for our agenda today, which is a conversation on mentorship and what that means. So just to kind of, and this is something we mentioned on the Facebook group as well, so you guys have probably thought about it a little bit. So how do we start the conversation on mentorship is what we were thinking about. And one thing we did was list out some areas in which mentorship may be needed. So the first thing that we'll do in this session is figure out if that covers everything. Are there things we're missing? How do we add to this list? So if we can make this as interactive as possible with people speaking up, that would be great. So just to go over the areas that we have here. So the first one we wrote about was understanding the body of work that your work connects to. So understanding the literature, prior research, all of that. Then research design, which is basically figuring out how you're going to go into the field, how you're going to either set up your experiment or do ethnographic work, what are your research questions, how are you going to try to address them. Third is actually implementing whatever research design you have. So doing it in the field, right? And there are challenges that, as someone pointed out, that there's some challenges that everyone faces, and we don't know that everyone faces them. And so maybe learning from other folks who've had that experience before could help. Fourth is actually writing, and writing captures a lot of things, but framing the work, structuring the work, and then just the language itself. So this is something that comes up repeatedly, and Kai has had this conversation as well on Facebook, with something that maybe folks in this room can speak to most closely, which is around just the fact that English is not the first language for many of us. And so writing papers that may not be wonderfully crafted in English, but may actually still be solid research. So something, and I'll share, I won't name names, but someone shared with me that they were reviewing a paper, this research that was done in a developing country, and the research was great, but the English wasn't. And it wasn't so hard that you couldn't understand, but it was hard that, I mean, it seemed poorly presented. And two reviewers were completely on board. The third reviewer basically said, no, I mean, it's completely unreadable. So the paper ended up getting rejected. That sort of thing happens very often. I've seen it happen, I'm sure you guys have. So what are things that we can try to do to mitigate the impact of that? So all of that comes into writing. And then fifth was presentation. So how do we actually speak to people both within our community, so maybe people within this room, but also people outside, right, to the general Kai audience. And that could be at conferences. It could be just, you know, when you meet people, you're networking, and you tell them, people ask you, what are you working on? How do you speak to them? Because when you speak to someone, if someone asks you, what are you working on, what they want to hear is, what are you working on that I can understand or I can relate to, or that's interesting to me, right? So how do we talk about our work? So those were 5 areas that we've been kind of brainstorming through and we came up with. What are we missing? I see.
I find it remarkably difficult to generate hypotheses and come up with research questions that really matter. I think there's a kind of research strategy that goes prior to, before you know your relevant work in research design.
Okay. Actually, can I ask someone to help me with note-taking here? So I'm not trying to take notes and move the conversation. That would be good. Thank you. So generate hypotheses and ask research questions that really matter. Okay, so generate hypotheses and research questions. What else?
When you use HCI, one of the things that baffles me for last year is the methods. So there's a huge number of methods now to model it. There's like idiot's guide to methods. Sometimes I feel like I know something, and then I realise actually what I'm doing is things slightly different to what I thought I was doing. So, yeah. Or even that there's like a linkage page where you can look at the experts and that method. You can just double check before you then go, wow, okay, so I reject it on the basis that what you thought you were doing.
Okay.
Maybe it's special cases.
And methods is an especially hard one because when you get a review that says you used the wrong method, then it's hard, like you have to redo it, right? As opposed to you just wrote it in poor English. So methods, what else? Yeah, I mean research design is quite broad, but yes. So asking research questions and figuring out hypotheses and methods, I guess, would kind of come under that umbrella. What else? Liz and then Melissa. Wait, you're Liz, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't tell if you were pointing to something behind me or not. Something that I run into is for my specific program, we're supposed to have. Oh, thank you. We're supposed to have a like committee members on our advisory team, and I don't know about anyone else, but I've found it very difficult to find someone to join that team who is doing work directly related to what I'm doing. And so I've got like 2 members of my team, but there's a third person, and they have to like meet a certain like qualification of like tenureship or tenure track, and they have to be outside my department, and it's been impossible like to find that. And so having a way, I think this mentorship of like also connecting people seeking like more advisory role or joining the advisory committee on your like specific thesis research or dissertation research, I think that'd be valuable as well.
Okay, so would that also be kind of knowing the community? So
Yeah,
knowing what people work on? Hopefully the trading cards. Okay, Melissa.
So we're talking about like areas in which people need mentorship, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that's listed here is stuff that's the responsibility of your advisor or
Absolutely.
supervisor, and it's very like I think it's worth having a conversation with your mentor or whoever and your supervisor about how to navigate those dynamics, because you don't want the mentor feeling step on the supervisor's toes in terms of like if there's any conflicting advice, and I think it's to be aware of, and then also maybe discussing different mentorship models, because I would say for like Deb, the work we did shepherding, like one of my students' papers was amazing. It was a ton of work though, but that shepherding model is something that is tied to mentorship. I think Sadi has a mentor that she talks with every week. That's not me, right? And I think that's valuable for her, but it's also a much more engaged type of mentorship than maybe what we would be talking about here. And then last time we did the kind of quick, like the mentors are at this corner of the room and you have a conversation with them for 10 minutes. So I think I'm not sure which model these come under, and I think what areas apply actually depend a lot on the model of mentorship that we apply.
Absolutely. Actually, and Christian and I just 5 minutes ago were talking exactly about the first thing that you mentioned about mentors, and what about how your mentor, faculty, advisor would feel if you were kind of seeking this kind of mentorship, and why should you be seeking this kind of mentorship outside of that relationship? Just one thing I wanted to ask you kind of in response to that was, what about, if you think about things like research internships, right? You're working with another mentor for a 3-month period. Could it be something of that sort, where you have a short-term relationship with someone else, maybe not an internship, but someone else who can give you advice or inputs on your research that is not your faculty advisor? So that, I mean, basically trying to kind of navigate that relationship. That could be one way. But we'll come to the how in a bit. If we can just add to this list, and then we can move on. Christian.
Well, maybe one answer could be, if the student has this list, he or she would be able to ask the right questions to the supervisor. So if the supervisor is not tackling the topics or is not reading whatever the student is writing, or the supervision, the silent supervision is not satisfactory, so the student with this list can actually ask for the different things that he or she would need to be advised on. That without the list, the student might not know what is it actually what's going wrong when the paper is rejected. I don't know if this helps.
Sorry, there was a hand here.
Yeah. So there are certain research areas, like multi-domain research areas, like bioinformatics, so in which we have potentially a very long-term instead of short-term. We have long-term involvement of, say, a physician, and at the same time a computer scientist or any other relevant domain-specific person. So that also entails certain complications in this mentorship, ownership,
Yeah.
and then guidance.
Yeah.
So those are also certain issues which need to be tackled under the mentorship. So cross-domain research mentorship.
Sabi?
I'm going to deviate quite a bit here. So I was looking at research mentorship, or are we thinking of more general career mentorship as well?
I mean, I think that's on the table, so we can, yeah.
Because what I want to say is all this is super important to everybody. And just say if I ever heard like sort of, but I also think that at different points in our lives we need more than just how to do research, but then what do you do with your life is actually something, that I know I will benefit from a lot of people's experiences who are here. For instance, after my MSc, going to PhD, I would have benefited from having discussions with people who did their PhDs in different places, in different fields, etc., and thinking about the implications of what topic I choose in my PhD and what I will read for the rest of my life. I think some of those experiences and forms of mentorship, it's not direct research mentorship, it's just sort of career choices and career paths. I think it's super valuable. And also, I don't have to do my life, so
Aisha.
No, I think what Sabi is saying is very important because Susan and I, for instance, we are mentors for the HCIxB Women's Program here at CHI, and so we're mentoring other PhD students, but it's kind of like for career things and others, so you have to separate it from the research mentorship because the supervisor is the one who's responsible for that. And if you suddenly have somebody who can come and give like conflicting also sort of styles and everything else, it's gonna mess up the thing, the relationship as well. So you need to be careful on what type of, all of us have mentors, right? In addition to this group, but there's a separation between them.
Yeah, absolutely. Whose responsibility is it to kind of navigate that conflict? Would you say, like, how does one go
I would
about
say
it?
that the mentor, for instance, in the first place, the mentor would probably not venture into that. I wouldn't expect a mentor to venture into that area. So a mentor is something completely different. Than they can't be talking about the research that's under the supervision of the supervisor. That's conflict.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Kind of related to several of these last comments. Sometimes, in the course of the PhD, you face the question, am I in the right discipline? And a more research technical question, which is related to that, is what's the right publication target for this work? So like stuff like scientific information systems in general, not the same kind of fit for dev or for accessibility.
Yeah.
And those were a lot of the questions to your point that I didn't know how to ask because I didn't realize how much research rigor and validity changes by publication target. One more I'd add is
Another challenge that comes with that is related work then, right? Because if you're sending something to HCI versus other disciplines, you need to cite different bodies of work.
absolutely. The other one is research funding.
Research funding.
That's part of it.
Okay. So funding the research. Anything else?
I think to connect me to the research communities, because I feel like I never had an HCIxB mentor, so I've just never been able to figure out how to plug into that community or Grid Hopper or any of these things, or like connecting into HCI cross board and finding out of funding opportunities. Mentors are useful for that. Sometimes, like, I don't know everything, so I can't help copy everything that's out there. Help having other people.
Yeah, and in fact, Michaelan met David here last year, right? And he's on her committee now. So that was one happy coincidence that they found that they had both done work in Cuba. But those kinds of collaborations could be figured out.
If I may,
Anthony,
actually.
yeah.
So I've never mentored anyone academically, but I've done a lot of mentoring for other things. And some things that actually have come up is when I mentored someone, I felt that my role was to sort of simply be their cheerleader and be in their corner. So a lot of things that were asked of me were actually not like specific advice necessarily, though that of course was asked. But there was also a lot of softer aspects of it, emotional support, and validating someone's decision. Sometimes someone comes to me and asks. I've had people ask me, that I want to, do something else. I want to leave. I want to try to pursue something else, and they're not asking me whether my permission. They're asking me for my support, and so a lot of times, the right answer is to talk them through simply, their decision-making process, and make them feel good about and feel confident about what they want to do. And so, I don't know. I would say that is the emotional support and the softer side of that kind of mentoring is important as well.
Ali, and then
So one thing that came in my mind is that there are a handful of people here who could be good mentors, but there are many other out there that I know who are not here. So finding mentors and introducing us to those mentors who are not here, so that build a network and to expand.
okay. So building the network, Nitya.
I think there's a spectrum, and I find myself, I have a lot of mentors, but at the same time, I don't have a go-to mentor for sharing papers and getting critical feedback, so I'm kind of isolated in that regard, right? And I can imagine there are a few others who may be in that situation where you want a non-judgmental place without having to send to a PC or a conference and get feedback. So yeah, it would be nice if there is a group of experts with different areas that could give feedback.
Okay. And so they could be peer mentors as well, not necessarily someone much more experienced, but could be your peers. Susan.
It's a little risky because several people that I'm mentoring are in this room. But what I find is the most effective thing, because people have the answer often in themselves. They just need to think it out. So a lot of times, just asking questions can be the most effective way to get people to work through things. And you can do that even if you don't know anything, because many times I know nothing about the things that mentees are asking. So.
How do you want to write that?
Anything else? So we do have more that we want to kind of discuss, not just sort of bring out the issues around mentorship. But we can move on to that conversation. Okay, so so the next thing we want to talk about is kind of how, right? So how do we try to bring in this mentorship? How do we try to put together a pool of mentors? I don't know if Kentaro is here right now. But, oh, he is. Okay, just not in my line of sight. But we were discussing at lunch, and I asked him for his advice on how we could try to set something up. And so one thing that came up from discussion with Kentaro with other students was that we could try to pilot something for Kai. The deadline is in September. Just a quick show of hands. How many of you think that you might be possibly interested in submitting something to Kai? That's like a good number?
Possibly interested.
Would you consider sending something to Kai?
But our own work.
In September? Yeah, your own work, your own research. My question is, are you interested in publishing at Kai at all?
So your question though is that you're thinking of finding this mentorship at Kai. Is that right?
So for the September deadline.
Okay, so you're looking for both mentors and mentees to put their hand up if they're going to do something.
In 2 minutes, yes. So just getting to that. So I just wanted to see if Kai was a venue of interest for people, right? Because some of us are not doing HCI research. Many of us are, most of us are here actually for the whole conference. So hopefully that's a popular enough venue. So the next thing we were going to come to is basically, and this is what we were talking about, and we're totally open to feedback. What if we had, say, a junior mentor and a senior mentor? So two folks. And so we have a pool of mentors basically, and for each individual who's seeking mentorship, have them team up with two other such individuals and have a very sort of clear set of deadlines and responsibilities that we could try to follow. So something like shepherding, the shepherding before the paper has been written rather than after it's been submitted. And so the mentors can be decided from the pool based on what the paper might be about. So for example, this is not set in stone, but for example, you want to write a paper on maternal health and submit it to, in Pakistan and submit it to CHI in September. In June, you have a one-pager, which is basically stuff you want to do, like data you want to collect on this. And so you put this together on one page, you submit it to, let's say, the HCI Cross Borders hot crap system that we were using. And we have a pool of mentors, just as we had a program committee. And someone gives you feedback on that. And then, based on that feedback, if you want to go through the second round of mentoring, that might be a stage where you put together a draft and you share that about 4 or 5 weeks before, so a month before the deadline, and you can get another round of feedback at that point. And you could have, again, a junior mentor and a senior mentor. So the junior mentor might work with you a little more closely, the senior mentor could give you a little more high-level feedback. This is just something to start with. What do you think of that kind of a model? And how would you want to iterate on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We're already forming teams.
Yeah.
And we're expected to work for 12 months
Mm-hmm.
with the project with these teams.
Yeah.
So is this a separate model than this mentorship?
It could be combined if you want mentorship on that. But if you don't want mentorship on that idea, you're okay to do it on your own. You don't have to. Melissa.
Like framing research is also supposed to be in the supervisor's report. And I understand like people might not have supervisor's experience in submitting CHI, and this having someone who's written paper for CHI might be helpful, but I'm a little confused by it, right? Because like if you have somebody who is a mentor on your paper and really involved with it, who may end up being a co-author, and this needs to be like, how do you navigate these dynamics of contribution? And also, I mean, this needs to be like the supervisor is writing the paper with the student, right?
Yeah. So let me ask you, so with the shepherding situation, how would you deal with that?
Well, so for Deb, it's totally different because we wrote the paper, and the shepherding was really part of the review process after the research had been done.
Right.
And it was additional help on like language and framing, just like an outside perspective.
Yeah.
At that point, but at the formative research stage,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if people agree with me if I'm just being a flashy.
I think we might have 50 different perspectives in this room, right? Which is perfectly fine. We're just having a discussion just to know what people might think.
Yeah.
So that might be the case, but I can imagine, for instance, like Azra wants to do a project which is like a UBCom project. And I'm not a UBCom expert. I've never submitted a UBCom. I would say, okay, let's find someone who can mentor you on that side of the work. And then you...
But that's not mentorship. That's like collaboration, right? And so when Sabi's writing a paper that involves a lot of statistics and I don't have much strength, then I go to Brian and I say, hey Brian, can you take a look at this, see if you're interested?
Mm-hmm.
And he's a co-author, right? And it's a very clear relationship.
Does anyone have an example of a non-collaborative Kendara?
I just want to say that my suggestion to you was along lines that Melissa was suggesting, which is that any feedback that you provide on a one-off basis is more along the lines of how you could improve the paper, not how you could improve the research design.
Yeah.
I agree
Yeah.
completely that if you're involved at that stage, it's a different question.
That's true. Although you might want someone to be involved in the research design. I mean, depending on where you are. But it's probably a case by case. Amy.
I think I agree with Melissa, but one thing that we always found incredibly useful was to have like a feedback buddy so that you knew you had someone to pass your paper to. So sort of the end stage part of that, a couple weeks before or maybe a month before, where you're saying, all right, I've got a draft of the paper, the one-off version that Kentaro was suggesting.
Yeah.
And I know not everyone has that at their institution. So you might, so that
So it
I
could
find
just be that,
enormously
absolutely.
useful.
And that is what Assets has, by the way, right now. I think. So that could be it. It could just be 2 weeks before the deadline or 4 weeks before the deadline. If you have a draft by then and you want feedback, then you could do that. Any other thoughts?
Piece of work that we started when I was in the department, and she wants to kind of adapt it as a for it. Do that, that's great, but I'm not sure it's going to fit, and I've never been, and I've never been able to, okay. But it's actually really useful. So yeah, we just had one cycle, exactly as you said, for half an hour.
Oh, wonderful.
Someone who says, you know, it really fits, but your examples are too specific. People don't care about this particular thing, you just make it more general. You think it's a great paper, but, you know, and then, like, it really helps you. Yeah, that's what it's useful.
I think that's great. I mean, if it seems to work for, I mean, are there any issues that might come up with that kind of one-time feedback process? What do you think? Because that might be something we can easily implement. Just have a pool of mentors. So have you guys sign up today? Curtis?
I don't know. I mean, I think what Melissa and Tara are speaking to is a very functional research system that's kind of used at the moment. I've got people looking at my ICTD submission, and that's one thing. The other thing is, like, as a reviewer at ICTD, you get papers that are just clearly out of bounds, like they're not making it in, this wasn't well. And trying to fix that is a separate problem, and that's still a good problem to fix, and it might require going so far as to be co-author. And I think you're going to get a lot more participation, and these are probably the communities that need more mentorship than my students, where I can go knock on Fogarty's door or Melissa's door and be like, hey, please look at this. And so I don't know if that other problem is solvable or not. I think that's what you're trying to solve, is that problem, which is really hard.
It might. I mean, I don't think that's the only problem we're trying to solve. So we do want to be able to give feedback, because that seems like an easy thing to do. So why not, right? I mean, because I've seen papers that I feel like if you just had one round of feedback, it would be so much better. So it could go from a 2.5 to a 3.5. And what Kentaro was saying was that moving something from a 2 to a 4 requires much more interaction, right? And maybe you realize a month before the deadline that you do need that, and maybe you're willing to put time into that, and so maybe you want a collaboration at that point. I'm just saying maybe that collaboration could come out of that.
I'll say from my own grad career, what I did was use venues like this for early phases of work to get it in front of the community and get feedback, which there have been a dearth of workshops in ICTD for a short while, at least ones that were available for my own networking sub-community. So it's really nice that this exists as a place for work to go and be reviewed. And if I hadn't done that, my students would probably be here. So there may be just an element of structural pieces to making this a venue for the work to be vetted to that next step, rather than, hey, we're going to get these papers to be time papers immediately.
Why not do both?
What?
Why not?
Because of the issues I think Melissa's speaking to, which is that at some point, like if I'm mentoring a paper through Kai,
yeah.
And why only Kai? Why not also PD? Your deadlines a month after that.
No. So I was just saying we could pilot something for this year's Kai, and just assuming that Kai is something that people might be interested in, because we're all here to attend Kai. And this is by no means something that needs to be set in stone, but something that we can try out. And I'm just saying, why not try to do what you guys are suggesting, and also just keep it open so that other people want other kinds of mentorship or feedback, we can seek it out. But other thoughts?
I would say, like, okay, so just keeping the context limited to a pilot for getting feedback for paper submissions into this Kai in 2018. Like, I think the real challenge that you would have there is, I guess, if, like, I can imagine we could, like, have an email list, right, and, like, submit papers to it, and then people would read it. But, like, I think the real challenge would actually find someone who is interested, connect people, like, I'm writing on this, and find someone who's interested enough in that exact same topic that they're willing to spend the time to, mentor it even to the level of, say, authorship, which is the problem that Curtis and Melissa are talking about, right? So I guess that would be the real challenge, is how do we find, connect, the mentor to the mentee, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, how do we do that in real life?
Well, it was just maybe we are actually, in some of us, thinking about finding the right co-author.
Yeah.
So maybe that could be a goal, is not just a mentor, but finding a person who's deeply already involved in that style of work, and using this as a resource to find, the person in education, if you haven't worked in the education space before, or in health if you're not in the health space, so getting them on board early and with the agreement of the supervisor, so that you're avoiding any conflicting issues. Yeah.
I was going to say, it sounds like maybe categorizing the different types of mentorship.
Like I want quick feedback versus more engaged
like
feedback.
People who are willing to be the mentors, they can classify, okay, this is the amount of mentorship that I'm comfortable with.
Okay.
Whether it's just like a quick 30-minute overview, or whether they're willing to join someone's advisory committee, or willing to co-author a paper through to completion. And then maybe even like the mentees can classify what kind of mentorship they're looking for, and that might help to match better. Just an idea.
No, absolutely. That seems to make sense. Melissa.
So we don't need an answer to this now, but would a mentor be able to review the paper as like a guide?
No.
Right? So we always I remember sometimes it's hard to find reviewers for a given paper because our community is actually on the small side, and then as soon as we take
Look, it's
more
going.
people and throw them at a paper, they would take it basically two potential reviewers out of them.
Yeah, or you might find someone who you're already connected with. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have that.
You basically construct a situation in which the two people most qualified that would be most likely to give you an informed review at the high review process level are now not able to be official reviewers, and now you have people who aren't experts reviewing your paper and making it less likely to get it.
So I'm gonna say one thing in response to that, which is that if you don't already have your own pool of mentors, that means that you probably don't know a lot of people in the community. So if you find one person who is going to mentor you, that's just n minus 1, where n was really large to begin with. And this is just for argument's sake, because I don't know, it depends person to person, example to example. But that could be the person's choice, right? They could then decide that, okay, I don't want to do this because I'm going to rule out a bunch of reviewers. I mean, this is not mandatory by any means. Not everyone has to speak mentorship. But it's... Paper readers. Yeah. Yeah, sure. And maybe you can start with that and maybe then try to seek more involved mentorship. I mean, should we?
Maybe a more equal relationship, because one of the great things about being at Berkeley was that we would gather it with other PhD students also submitting to the same conference and just sit in the same room and read each other.
Yeah, that's what Amy was saying, right?
And so peer, like a peer,
so peer feedback.
Paper is much
And
but also really helpful for people that are smaller, where you don't have 10 people submit to the same conference.
Okay. Should we try to set up a peer feedback engine for Kai in September? Ryan.
There are 3 different suggestions.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep track of everything.
I'm glad you are. I'm not.
3 explicitly different things. One was the idea of having a co-author dating site or something. Where you can try and find somebody
He's a Tinder for people writing.
Yeah, but that would happen very early. That would happen,
then the second thing was like the expert early stage review or something like that, where you want a quick 30-minute review from some faculty member who's kind of an expert in that. And then the third thing, which we kind of just proposed here, is like the peer exchange, where we're all submitting to Kai, so no later than 2 weeks before the deadline, you have to submit your thing, maybe match randomly with 1 or 2 others. You give some feedback, you get some feedback, and hopefully that's a useful process.
Yeah.
So those seem like three distinct.
Can we have those three as just options on the table, and people can pick? That's great.
Well, three things to administrate, so somebody has to administrate, right? Because they would have 3 different deadlines, they would have 3 different pools of people.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Can I pick your brains on that a little bit later, and then try to propose something in the morning for feedback? Okay. And if any of you have other thoughts that you haven't shared because you don't want to share them with everybody, then please let me know. So 2 important things to announce. One is that at the end of today, which is like very soon, Susan wanted to take photos. You wanted to take photos of people with their posters. So if you could please, if you don't want your picture taken, you don't have to. But Susan would like to take pictures of folks with their posters. If you don't have a poster, you can still get a picture taken, and we will put them up on our website. If you don't want your picture on the website, you don't have to get your picture taken. Okay? So that was one thing. Is anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, remember Regina and using this kind of information to communicate about Sakai. So it's important if you can say it, please do.
The second thing is we're doing dinner open for all. We're not actually paying for everybody, but we are inviting everybody to join us to buy their own beer and food from the food truck at a place called the Great Divide. And so, Nivina, can you share the info? You can look it up, right? You can just Yelp it, you can look it up. But 7 onwards, and some of us might head there a little bit earlier so we can save tables. If you have better things to do, if you want to catch up on sleep, if you want to work on your slides, you can do that. No compulsion, but if you want to join us, we'll be there. So just a place to socialize and not think about all this work. So beyond that, so those are just the 2 things we wanted to mention before we break for the day. Any questions at this point?
What's the name of this one?
The Great Divide. Very aptly named. It's close by. How far is it? Like 2 or 3 blocks. I don't think it's. Oh, it's longer? I can't remember. I think we can find our way there independently at 7. People will be there. Okay? Alright. So thank you all.
One more thing.
Yeah, please.
We're going to be leaving stuff on tables and things, but please don't leave anything valuable. And would you please take all your food garbage and extra cups and stuff and throw those away?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Just call me Mom.
Thank you.
So for taking the pictures now with your poster, Marcel will take the picture. So I would like to ask you, we start here with poster 0 and we walk our way through all the posters, and I would like to ask the authors to stand in front of their posters if you agree that this photo will be published on the website next to your paper that it's downloadable.
I have a question. What about people who don't have posters? What about people who don't have posters?
We take group picture or
You can still get your picture taken if you don't have a poster. We'll find a background.
So if you don't have a poster, you can go to our area where we go to clusters and we will take a group picture of one of you. So please go and stand in front of your posters to get the photo.
So first, I don't think there was a whole lot of administrative tasks. online learning
Yeah. The leaders. There's two phases. Guys, anyone use a technique? So there's currently two phases that are called re-devise. One is the brewery, one is cleanup. And I'm looking for an arena. Okay. So do you know which one it is? The brewing company is about 0.8 miles away. It's the brewing company and it's 0.8 miles away. Okay. See you there in 7.
Great
device between company and 7 is where we're going. It's within a mile. Yeah. I think it's totally fine if you rest. Oh, you did. Yeah, I think it's